right, welcome back to First Available, the podcast where we talk all things disc golf. It is March 4th, 2024. I actually just clicked over. It's 12:02 a.m. as I'm recording this. And this is episode number 5 already. And it seems kind of weird because while 5 episodes has seemed to go by really quickly, the first episode seems like it was a really long time ago. I can't explain that. It doesn't matter. That's not important. But if you're watching in, you can tell it's just me in the studio today. Well, I do have my assistant, Jasper, behind me on the table where we record when Ross and or Landon is in with us. If you're just listening in, Jasper is just my stuffed animal sloth that I believe my wife got that for me. I'm a huge fan of sloths. They're one of my favorite animals, and he's one of those type that has like the bean bag in them and you can microwave them. I don't ever do that, but I was letting the kids play with them, so he's sitting on the table and he'll be hanging out with us today. But let's move on. As I promised, the majority of this episode is going to be talking about the second solo tournament that I participated in over this previous weekend, the second annual Raider Cup. So real quick, we'll go over some pro news, mostly about scores, about the Memorial. I have one other topic in mind, and then we'll dive into a breakdown on the tournament and kind of how that went for me. So if you're not really interested in hearing about that, that'll be at the end. So once I start talking about that tournament I was in, that'll be the remainder of the episode. So fair warning, I will get windy. But let's hop in and talk a little bit about some pro topics. I didn't get a chance to actually watch any of the Memorial over the weekend. I did play my daily round with Ross on Friday out at Carroll, and after we finished that, I had to record some B-roll and some establishing shots for the putter madness that we've been hyping up for the last month. And then once I finished recording there, I had to drive out to Xenia, do the same thing there. Then I had to drive over to Kettering Indian Riffle Disc Golf Course. Same thing there, and then drive over to Moraine. Same thing there, and then drive over to Arthur Fisher, which is just a couple miles down the road from Moraine, and get all the B-roll and establishing footage for all the putter madness stuff that'll be coming up. So exciting stuff. I drove around the city for 2 hours and filmed probably 12 minutes of footage, but I got everything I needed for that. And then Friday evening, I had to take my kids out to their glow party at the school, so they had a bunch of fun, face painting, pizza, all that kind of stuff. So good times. But the reason why I'm telling you all this is just that's how busy of a weekend I had. Then Saturday I had the tournament that I played in, and then Saturday evening my wife and I went out to Springfield, Ohio to the Video Games Live concert. And I'm not going to bore you with the details if you're not interested, but if you are interested, go to their website and check them out. This is my 4th time I've gone to their concert, and it's amazing every single time I go. I love it. And then moving into Sunday morning, myself, Ross, and Landon, we went out to Kettering and we filmed the first episode, the first regional play of that Putter Madness. Not going to give any spoilers for it. I'll get that episode probably published sometime this week on my YouTube channel, but I will say that it went very well. There's some exciting times that took place during that challenge or that regional play today. We had a lot of fun, all 3 of us. Really wasn't knowing what to expect doing that. I had told Ross I estimated it would take us about 45 minutes to do a regional round. Because if you're not familiar with doing tournaments like the March Madness tournament, if you're not sure how many games it is, however many teams are participating in a standard tournament bracket, it's 1 less than that is the amount of games. So obviously if you have 2 teams facing each other, it's 1 game. If you have 4 teams in a playoff, it's 3 games, because you first have these 2 teams playing each other, that's 1 game. These 2 teams playing each other, that's 1 game. And then the winners playing each other, it's your 3rd game. So the easy way to know is however many teams you have, subtract 1, that's the amount of games. So with the regional play and that Putter Madness being 16 teams or 16 putters, it's going to be 15 matchups, and I figured maybe 3 minutes total to record a single matchup. Figured that was ample time. That seemed to be about right. I think we finished in about 40 minutes. All right, so let's hop into some of the meat and potatoes of the episode today. We're going to look at some pro scores from the weekend, talk about one topic before we get into the Raider Cup that I participated in. So I'm going to pull up the PDGA website on the screen here if you're watching along. Gannon Burr ran away with, or didn't run away with really. He ended up winning the Memorial over the weekend by 2 strokes over Aaron Gossage. And then Anthony Barella, 29 under, had a really hot round in round 2, this 11-13 rated round. And that was due to him shooting this ridiculous. He opened up hole 1 with a par, and then the remaining 2 through 18 holes, all birdies. So insane. And all those except for 2 of them were par 3s. So he had 2 par 4 birdies and then 15 par 3 birdies, which is kind of insane. Now, again, I didn't get to watch any of this footage, so I'm not sure, how he was playing. I saw a post on Facebook talking about how hot of a round he shot, and then the follow-up round, which would be round 3 for him, was considerably lower from what I read. So yeah, 11-13 round 2 rating, 10-13 round 3 rating. So he dropped 100 rating points between rounds. Guess that was a big deal to some people. Sometimes I feel like people cherry pick stats in a certain way to make things look worse than what they are. But anyways, AB takes down 3rd place after just coming off a win. So, 2 podium finishes in a row, not bad in my opinion. And then Ulibarri coming in 4th. And rounding out the top 5, Isaac Robinson, who somehow still seems to be underrated, in my opinion. Obviously, most people know he's very good. I don't hear people talking about him quite as much as they should be. Still looking forward to him having a big year. Heading down to the FPO side of things, Owen Scoggins wins 26 under par. And then closest competitor there, Jennifer Allen, at 18 under par, so 8 strokes back. And then after that, Violet Main and Hannah Stefanovic, I believe is how you say that. All right, so that wraps it up for the talk about the Memorial. The other topic I want to talk about was what I saw going around, the hot topic for this weekend. Obviously, in previous weekends, it was, Disc Golf Network, subscription models, and then last weekend, I don't even want to touch on what the hot topic was. This weekend, it was how long it takes Jacob Curtis to putt. So Jacob Curtis, who finished tied for 12th place, so obviously not bad, with a rating of 1,011. So not bad there either. Apparently takes forever to putt. And this is not any new news to most people either. I remember seeing clips last year of him taking forever to putt. I'm going to pull it up on the screen and show a clip of him putting, and then we'll talk about it.
Uncharacteristic for sure.
Knowing you're also already, essentially underneath the basket. So you're going to be walking away with the birdie. One of the interesting things that we've noticed is, Cupcake has said, he's like, I can feel that it's time. Like, right. I know I need to putt. And you see these hesitations that sometimes come from him, and it's really surprising.
Yeah, I've talked to him about it a little bit too, and he just says it's hard to get the disc to come out of his hand. Like, he'll go some of these pump fakes. He's like, he's ready to putt it. It feels good, and then he's like, nope, it's not coming out of the hand. Got to go a couple more. But does make a very solid putt there. It's a good birdie to pick up.
That puts him 5 under for today's round.
All right, so if you were watching there, you can see on the screen, or you could see on the screen the time it took. If you were just listening in, that probably felt like an eternity for him to actually attempt the putt. And if you are just listening in, I want to say that putt was probably between 15 to 18 foot would be my guess. It wasn't far out in a circle one, wasn't, touching the basket. But for me, I'm kind of a split decision on this whole 30-second rule, because when you're either in the wide open or you are putting in circle one, for sure, I thoroughly think that we should have a 30-second rule, because that took 49 seconds. I don't think that 30 seconds is unfair. 30 seconds seems like such a short time when you just tell someone 30 seconds. Like, you got 30 seconds to do something. Like, oh, well, that's like no time at all. But you can see there when you're focusing in, when everyone's watching, all the other people on the cart are waiting for you to make your putt. I don't like rushing pro players, but this was the problem that really got me out of not liking professional baseball anymore. It was my favorite sport growing up as a kid, And then the sport just got way too slow for me. And that could be part of the entire lifestyle that we live now with social media and everything moving so quickly. That could play a role in it. I don't know. I don't really care. Watching that just one time is kind of annoying. Having to watch that for an entire round, I wouldn't be able to deal with it. And again, I don't want to rush people. On the flip side of that, I don't like a 30-second rule when you see a player that is, in a tough spot. If they get into some honeysuckles, or if they just have some kind of obstacle that, especially if it's like one of those obstacles that shouldn't be there, like after, what was it, last weekend? I think it was last weekend, right? That was the chess. More so, I think, the weekend before during the All-Star event when the course had a bunch of water on it. Something that you don't plan for, and you get stuck in that situation, telling someone like, hey, you have 30 seconds. That's much different than putting. Most of this circle one putting, for the most part, is going to be unobstructed, like no major issues. Yes, there's going to be scenarios where you have a death putt. Yes, there's going to be scenarios where your footing's weird and you're on a hill or something like that. And I'm okay extending that time for those situations, maybe up to 45 seconds, maybe in extreme situations up to a minute. I mean, a minute to putt is a long time unless you're putting in a gosh darn tornado, in my opinion. And again, on the flip side, when you're out in the fairway, throwing a long shot is completely different. It's completely different for you to figure out what kind of line you're going to have. Again, if you're in the middle of the fairway and there's not some considerable OB, 30 seconds should be sufficient for you to get your shot off. But I just think when you're actually throwing a long distance shot, that some more time allotment would be better. But anyways, that was kind of the one thing I want to talk about. I would love in the comments if you have an opinion on that, what you guys think about it. I'm also going to put a poll up on Spotify. If you don't know, every time I post the podcast to Spotify, I usually put some sort of poll option on there for you guys to look at if you're interested in that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's everything I have to talk about on the pro stuff. Let's move over and talk about the Raider Cup, the second annual Raider Cup tournament that I played in. All right, so hopping into the second annual Raider Cup that I participated in, it's my second tournament, so I'm going to break it down the same way I did the first tournament. So this will take a while. If you're not interested, now would be the time to jump ship. But I kind of like talking about it because I'm a nerd. So I signed up early for the Raider Cup when I saw it was available. It took place at Wright State University, which is my home course. It's a pretty tough course, especially if you're not familiar with playing it. However, it's the course I've played the most, with the exception of Carroll Park, because usually when Ross and I are trying to get that daily round in, maybe on like a lunch break or something, and we only have an hour, Carroll Park is the way to go. We can get in and out of there in under an hour. Wright State takes more time, but it is my home course because it's so close to me. It's 5 minutes down the road, basically. And so real quick background, I started playing disc golf in the summer of 2021, and I played Wright State for the first time that fall, and it ate me alive. It was a tough course for someone that's new. I have no idea what my score is. It was probably something in the ballpark of like 7 to 10 over. And then as 2022 kicked in, that was kind of the year I really started getting into disc golf. I was trying to also lose some weight, so I was playing twice a day a lot. This time of year, February, March, and April of 2022, I was playing Wright State University like twice a day. So I've gotten really familiar with the course. The woods there, if you're familiar with it, or if you're not, I guess you're the one I'd be talking to. But the woods there can really show their teeth if you try to get too aggressive. But I'll talk about that as I go through all the holes. So again, I signed up for the MA40 again, and I was on a card. I don't think anyone else in my division was on my card because of the odd numbers. So we had myself, I think a few MA4 players, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I really asked, but we had an FA4 player as well, one female player on our card. But I had great card mates. Everyone had fun. We were all talking, kind of dorking out on disc golf in general. But they started us off on hole 15. And if you're not familiar with the course, there's a section that kind of is your scoring section, and there's a section that's not. And 15, 16, 17 are kind of like, in my opinion, for tournament play, you want to score 2 of those at least. Well, not at least. I would say 2. If you get 2 of those, you're sitting in good shape. If you get 1, okay. But if you don't get any birdies on those, you're not going to have too many more opportunities outside of that little bowl section. But Let's talk about the actual hole by hole. Okay, so I'm going to lean on you, Diska, here a little bit on screen if you are watching to help explain some of these holes as I talk through the tournament. So they had me starting off, or my card starting off on hole 15, as I had mentioned. And hole 15 is kind of this uphill shot. They do have a photo here, so you can see here on the short tee pad if you're viewing. You have this, I don't want to say slight uphill shot, because I remember when Ross and I first started playing this course, it was really hard to measure this hill unless you've played it quite a few times. At least for me it was. And I would often find that throwing a backhand shot, I just couldn't get up this hill. Now I had way less power back then as well. So I think last summer I kind of switched to throwing forehand on this, and I started getting some success on that, getting that up the hill. But the last couple months, I've been going back to throwing my MVP Tesla on this hole, and that has worked out really well for me. This is a, 268 foot, but it is uphill considerably, so it plays every bit of, I would say, 300 to 315-ish would be my guess. But yeah, I was the last one to go. Again, we had 5 people on my card. So I went last. I stuck with my Tesla. I was a little bit concerned because I didn't want to overturn it to the right. There was the slightest amount of wind, nothing to really worry about, but I did throw it just a little bit higher than desirable, just because I tend to do that when I'm afraid of burning something over or pushing something into the wind that will burn over. Is I will just naturally kind of throw it a little bit high, that way it has a chance to bail out. And that's what it did. It left me with a 15-foot putt, and I stepped up to it. I felt really good for some reason putting, and just it was a perfect putt. So felt really good for this tournament to get off to a birdie right off the bat. So let's move on talking about hole 16. Hole 16 is a little bit scary when there's wind. It's kind of the opposite. You're up on top of the hill and you're throwing down into this bowl. But this is one of my 2 favorite holes on this course. Hole number 2 and hole number 16 would be the signature holes in my opinion. Now let's get you a distance here. Hole 16 is 329 feet, but it plays downhill. So this one probably plays closer to that same 300 to 315-ish. And I like it because it's got this little hill on the right-hand side. So if you take a somewhat overstable disc and you kind of aim low and at that hill, you can kind of get it to skip up towards the basket. But this hole can also get you in a lot of trouble if you throw anything that can roll over or, burn over on you, because over the bushes on the right is Kaufman Avenue or Kaufman Road, whatever it is. It's a pretty major highway over there. So obviously don't want to be throwing down on traffic, but I stepped up with my TSA, my Thought Space Athletics Coalesce, which is like a 940 2.5, I would say, fade in my opinion. Those aren't the numbers they give it. Those are the numbers I'm giving it. It's, it's enough of a disc that you can work it straight for a long time, but it has that little hard fade at the end, which I like. And again, I made the same mistake. I had the tee pad here. I was the only one to birdie hole 15, I should have mentioned. So I stepped up and I threw that Coalesce here. Again, I threw it a little bit higher than perfect, a little bit higher than desirable, but it was safe. And again, it left me at another 15-foot putt. And it was another 15-foot putt that I made. So 2 birdies in a row. But that putt was terrible. It was not a good putt at all. I missed the top band by no more than a half an inch. I kind of threw a little floaty. Now, I was putting downhill, so I was concerned that if I run this hard, I run away from the basket if I airball it. So I kind of did the little loft floaty putt, and it caught chains, went in. So 2 birdies in a row, opening up the tournament, felt pretty good. Moving on to hole 17. Hole 17. That is not hole 17. That is hole 17, which is this is a summertime picture, and I'll put it on the screen here in a minute for you guys. But hole 17 is only 199 feet uphill. Now, there's a fence on the right-hand side and a fence not too deep of the basket on the backside that plays OB for the tournament, and rightfully so. I've only ever thrown over that fence 2 times. I threw over that fence 2 times, and it was back when I was complete noob. Didn't know what I was doing. It shouldn't come into play, but typically what I'll do on this hole is go forehand, just because it's the easiest way to get up the hill. But Ross and I were talking about this tournament and kind of my game plan prior to me going into it. And he said, you really should throw that echo on that hole. You've been throwing the echo really good. It's kind of that hole that, let me pull it up here on the screen. It's kind of that type of hole that you need a little bit of turn at the beginning. So you want to throw it up here and it kind of turns into the right, but you still want it to flatten out at the end. Don't really even need it to fade. You kind of just need it to flatten out, maybe just the slightest amount of fade. And I went with the echo. I will admit that I overturned it just a little bit, but it was looking good. I was thinking I would be circle's edge right side, but it caught a tree, the edge of a tree, and it knocked it down. And I was actually looking at like a, 40-foot putt or so. It was early circle 2. But when it was my turn to putt, I stepped up and just threw a dead straight putt, and it went right into the chains. So I opened up with a third birdie. All right, so moving on to hole 18. This hole is 325 feet according to UDisc. I need to get out there and measure that because it feels longer, because 325 is not a problem to get to. And maybe it is. Maybe it's the shape of the shot that's the problem. These are still... All right, so right here, hole 18. This is from the long tee pad. Let me see if there's a short tee pad. Yeah, here's the short tee pad. Now, this has changed a little bit. This little picnic table isn't here, but hole 18... There are these Christmas trees. You can see the basket out here on the hill. Looks like it's just a dead straight shot. You do have this row of trees on the left-hand side, so like throwing like a hyzer flip kind of isn't an option there for a right-hand backhand player. And the problem is you have these Christmas trees over here by the picnic table or the picnic shelter close to the basket, or not close to the basket, but far down the fairway. It's right in the path that if you just want to throw a straight shot that fades out at the end, those trees are the problem, and you'll often land in them. Now, during our casual rounds, I've been trying to go with like a Zenith or even a Tenacity and just power it over the top of these trees. And I've been getting kind of close. But the last time I did that with my Tenacity, I actually cleared the picnic shelter and landed in the parking lot like an idiot. So that parking lot and the picnic shelter and everything was playing as OB as well. So with me opening up with 3 birdies in a row, and coming up to this hole, this is definitely a bonus birdie. I've only birdied this a couple times in casual round. I knew that there was absolutely no reason to try to push this and score on this hole and risk going OB. So I just stepped up with my Zenith, and I threw like 75% power, if that, figuring I would just throw right at these little Christmas trees I was talking about, fade in, have a long circle 2, maybe even a little bit out into the fairway, 75-foot type of layup, take my 3, move on. And I yoinked it. I grip locked it, and I sent it right to those Christmas trees. Luckily, I did throw the correct amount of power on it to where I faded, like, I cleared the trees as far as coming around the backside of them, and I just had a clear layup look. So it ended up working out great for me, but a little bit of luck there that I didn't go OB. If I would have accidentally put too much power on it, I would have went right into the picnic table area and had a penalty. So clean through 4 holes in 3 under. And moving on to hole number 1, and I'm so glad I didn't start on hole 1, because hole 1 is a forehand hole for me. I'm going to pull that up here. So hole 1, we grab you a distance, is 336 feet or 352 feet. I don't know what these two different numbers are. It's about right. It's a chuck. I really got to throw a semi-powerful forehand shot to get it down there. But you can't see it here, but down here there's this little group of trees, and your whole right-hand side of this fairway is lined with those trees. And the basket is almost a U-turn down there. You got to go down that tree, and it's like a really hard right, and it goes downhill. So if you do throw forehand, it can run away on you down there. But I stepped up with the Zenith, and again, I had T-pad at this point, and I threw my forehand. I threw it too hard and too wide, because the last thing I wanted to do was saw it off early and go into these trees, because then you're scrambling, you maybe bring in bogey into play. And again, this is another bonus birdie type hole. Now, I will say the last 2 rounds that Ross and I played there casually, I birdied it both times throwing forehand Zenith, but today I played it, or not today, during this tournament, I overplayed the safe side, and I had a long, like 80-foot up shot back to the basket. Now, on that upshot, coming back to the basket, I didn't want to risk going long, and I kind of duffed my upshot, and I left myself probably about 15 feet to putt out. And I made up my mind at that point that for the remainder of that tournament, if I had to take any sort of upshot that I wasn't trying to run, I was going to miss it long and not miss it short and put that kind of stressful putt on myself. So, I don't remember all the names of everyone that was on my card off the top of my head, but I know there was a MA4 player. He said he was relatively new to the sport in general. He threw a nice backhand, right-hand flex shot that went up through the trees and landed probably 15 feet from the basket, but in the honeysuckles, and he nailed a low putt, so that was pretty cool to watch him do that. And we had a lefty on our card as well, and he played this hole perfect. He absolutely parked it. So birdies and great shots to you guys. That was pretty fun to watch. Moving on to hole 2, which is the signature hole in the course, in my opinion. I can't wait to pull this up on screen. I love this hole so much. So I didn't have T-pad here. I got to watch a couple other people play, and if you're looking along on the screen here, this is the signature hole of the course, in my opinion. It's a pretty significant downhill shot. You got to throw over some trees, over this little service road. There's these 2 power antennas out in the middle of the fairway, and the basket is to the right of both of those. Now, I got my 3rd ever ace on this hole with an elevation binks back. It was right around this time in 2022. One of those times I was playing this course by myself. I threw it on backhand, had no clue what I was doing, and it went in. I was excited and perplexed, for lack of a better term. But anyways, this isn't about that. This shot I really am still trying to figure out for consistency purposes. Let me get the measurement. I think it's 327. Oh, it's got it listed at 337 or 314. I think 337 is the actual distance. It probably plays like 314. Now, I have been going forehand on this for the last solid year. I've had some pretty good success with it, but since my forehand has gotten better, my consistency has actually gone down. And when I say my forehand has gotten better, I just mean the distance part of it. I'm throwing forehands longer than I was before, and that's the problem, is that I threw my synapse on this hole on forehand, my blue synapse that was in a video I got from Hazy Shade a few weeks back, and I love the disc, but I made the error that I knew I wanted to make if I did make an error by throwing it a little bit too far left. I don't think I threw it too far left. I think I overflexed it a little bit, and I ended up splitting these 2 power poles, and I ended up being on the backside of the hole, or backside of the pin, by like 60 feet. So being 60 feet out, I had a nice little solid run at the basket. I missed it just right and long. My upshot, or my run from deep circle 2 just missed. I didn't catch any metal, but wasn't a bad run. Just I had to take a tap out par. So now I've gone 3 birdies in a row to 3 pars in a row. So through 6 holes, 3 under. Moving on to hole 3, and this is where the first backup happened. It's in the woods. It's a super tough hole. Generally in casual play, this is a par 3, and it is very tough. They had it in the tournament playing a par 4, and there's a creek on the right-hand side that if you were surrounded by water, you would be OB. The problem with that is that unless you go down there and check, it's impossible from day to day to tell how much water is in that creek because it drains so quickly and fills up just as quick. So I had no idea whether or not there was going to be OB in play for that. So I had to choose to either go with my elevation binks on backhand or to go with my time lapse on forehand. And my thinking on this when I got to my shot was I'm going with the time lapse forehand, even though if I saw that off, that brings that creek into play kind of big time. There's been a few times I've done that during casual rounds and I end up like down in that creek area. I don't think I've ever been in water down there, but I have been in the creek bed. So you don't want to do that. So I just said, hey, overflex it. If you burn it over, it's not a big deal. It's a par 4. You should still be able to get a 4 here, no problem. So I did that, flexed it pretty hard, and when I let go of it, I thought, oh, that might actually get up there and give me a chance to get up and down easily for a birdie. But I just clipped an edge of a tree and got shot right down into the ground. I went entropy forehand after that for an upshot. Again, just trying to play the left-hand side and stay up on the hill, even though there's a lot more skinny trees to beat there and you need some luck. I figure I'll hit one of those and just fall down, which is exactly what happened. And then I just had a little layup to take my par. So took a tap out par on there, no problem. Moving on to hole 4, and I did not have the tee pad. Hole 4 is very tricky. Now it's only got on the screen here, it's only got a shot from the long tee pad, and we were playing shorts on everything. I have learned very much so in these woods, especially on hole 4 and 5, to not get aggressive. And anytime I've ever tried to go, to try to reach the pin area off the tee pad, it always results in a bad shot. Let me get you a distance, because this isn't a long hole, but the fairways are nightmarish because they're basically non-existent. Hole 4 is 263 feet. It's a par 4, and rightfully so, because it is not easy to get to. I think almost certain I was the only person on my card to go forehand on this hole. I watched a couple of the players go backhand and kind of get into trouble real early by hitting these first set of trees. And anytime I've ever gone backhand off of this hole, that's exactly what happens to me. I hit a tree and I'm 50 feet off the tee pad. But there is a really nice, juicy forehand line. So I pulled out the MVP resistor and threw as high as I could. There's like, if you ever stand on that tee pad and you look up there, there is a gap that you don't want to drive through. You just basically want to lay up a forehand, and that's exactly what I did. And it got all the way around this path that curves to the right, that is the fairway, and it's a 5-foot wide path, probably at best. And I landed right in the middle of it. Pretty clean look at the basket from probably around circle 2 edge, I would say. So I had told myself when I got up to my lie, I could run this if I want to, but there's a little gap in between 2 trees and a branch, so it's almost like a triple mando I'd have to go through. And putting with the Kois, if you are to hit a tree, like the slightest tree or anything, the whole point of those is that once they make contact, they stop. So I didn't risk it. I just took my entry and swung a little forehand upshot, wide and around the basket. I was sitting 10 feet behind it for a basically tap-in birdie. So my first birdie, since I scored those first 3 right off the bat. So it felt really good. I needed that. And again, we're dealing with backups in these woods, which everyone I'm sure knew was going to happen. But we move on down to hole 5, and we pull that up here. So hole 5 is kind of the same deal. Where are we at here? Hole 5 is a par 4, 313 feet. Probably the toughest hole in the course, I'm guessing. This shot looks like it's from the long tee pad, and we pull it up on screen. But this is another one that for a while I was throwing forehand on, because generally if I have to hit a small gap, I'm more accurate with a forehand, just due to the fact that I can face my target. I'm more comfortable with it. But I've switched to backhand, I've switched to backhand. I wasn't having success. I was usually burning over my forehands and getting into trouble going down the hill on the left. But going with the backhand, again, I've been sticking with that echo, and I just try to throw it gently, like 50% power, and let it go up the fairway. Now, admittedly, I yoinked it a little bit right of where I intended to, and I hit one of these trees right before you reach the hill where it starts to turn left, and it kicked me to the right, but it didn't kick me off of the fairway. I was like on the edge of the fairway, kind of pinched off. But knowing that I wanted to take a forehand up shot for my approach, it actually worked out perfect. I pulled out the resistor from that spot. And again, knowing I was kind of pinched off to the right-hand side, I threw it pretty hard and swung it out to the left, knowing that, as long as I don't hit something early, that resistor should get down there and fight and get near a putt, if not giving me a putt. And it did. It put me at probably about 40 feet, and I had a clear look at the basket. And kind of reminiscent of hole 17, where I had that short circle 2 putt. I just floated it in there, and it went in. And I don't know why. I'm going to talk about this for a second. My putting in tournaments is really good, and I cannot explain it. I was talking to Ross about it this morning. We go out for casual rounds like today. We played Kettering this morning, and I'll miss 15, 20-foot putts 2-3 times around that should be routine putts. And I get into tournaments and I don't feel like I change anything except for the fact that I mark the disc every time. Maybe it's my routine. I don't know, but I haven't missed a putt so far through all these holes I'm talking about that I've had an actual putt attempt at. But anyways, back on the birdie train, 2 in a row. We get to hole 6. And hole 6 is one that I actually just aced on New Year's Eve when I came back from Florida. I threw a backhand entropy on it then, and I've been doing that since. Again, it's another hole that is, let's see here, 270 feet, considerably downhill, but super tight fairway. And I got it on the screen here again. So really one gap to hit on a backhand shot, and that's why I went with the backhand entropy again. Tried to throw it about 50% power, and I took the same approach that I took on hole number 4, where I looked up into the branches and found kind of a gap high that I could just throw softly into and let the entropy do its own fade and get down to the basket. Everyone on the card was yelling for it to go in because it was pretty close. I knew as high as I threw it that it probably wasn't going to go in, but I left myself another 18-foot putt, nailed it for birdie. Now I'm back on a 3 birdie in a row. So I went 3 birdies to open. Was it 4 pars? 18, 1, 2, yeah. 3 birdies to open, 4 pars to follow, and then 3 more birdies. So through 10 holes, I'm 6 down. And clean so far. I haven't had any errors, no OBs, no bogeys, nothing unforced. And wouldn't the timing have it that we get to hole 7. Hole 7 is one of the only 2 holes on this course that I have never birdied. It's now there's not a picture of it, of course, because this is one hole I would like you guys to see, but distance wise, 377 feet. So it's already a pump, but the problem with this is it's probably about 177 feet straight. And then it's like a 90-degree dogleg left. So it's really hard. The only way I've ever thought about trying to get into circle 1 for a putt is to try to throw some huge sweeping flex forehand with something moderately understable. And every time I've tried to do that, I burn it over and it rolls into the woods. So I just told myself, hey, we're 6 under right now, which is great. If I can just get out of the course with no bogeys at this point, I'd probably be happy. So I took my coalesce and I said, I'm just going to throw this 60% power right down the middle of the gap. It's a pretty wide open fairway, and just let the disc do the work. I'm not going to throw hyzer, try to pinch off and get a bunch of distance. Don't need it. Let's just kind of play a position shot and then step up with a forehand entropy, get off this hole with my par. And I yoinked it. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Sounds like hole 18 where I tried to play it too safe and I didn't let go of the disc in time. Luckily, again, because I did throw the right amount of power, I didn't power it into the trees. I had enough time to not get deep into those trees, and it did hit a limb and fall down. If you have played that course, there's a yellow gas pipeline marker, and that's kind of a place where if you want to play a real soft position off the tee pad, you could kind of get to that, and that's a place you can see the basket from and have a straight shot. I was probably 40 feet behind that, but luckily on the right side of the fairway. So I had that same exact line, but I didn't know that walking up to the disc. At this point, as soon as my disc landed and everyone else still had to tee off, I had conceded to the fact that was going to be my first bogey. I didn't want to do something stupid like get up there and try to throw a flex forehand to get something to sweep left and crash back towards the basket and get stuck in the trees and then be bringing double bogey into play. So I had basically convinced myself that we're kind of just throwing a soft little forehand shot, double forehand, tap out. But when I got to my lie, I looked straight at it. I was like, hey, this is actually dead straight. So I took my echo. And I've been bragging about this disc so hard the last couple months because it does everything for me. And I threw my echo on backhand, 60% power. It flexed or, turned just a little bit, then went straight forever and faded right by the basket and left me a 20-foot putt, maybe 25-foot putt. Now, I still was not sure I was going to make that putt because that's kind of that nervy area where I could easily miss that putt, but I stepped up there and somehow hit that putt and saved my par. I did par I didn't deserve, but the echo and the putt saved me. The drive was terrible. All right, so moving on to hole 8. Hole 8 is hole 8 is one that's tough to birdie, but I've done it plenty of times. Now, this is a hole that is 299 feet, but it's weird because you got a pretty wide fairway with trees, woods, not just trees, like full wooded areas on both the right and the left side of this, that you got to shoot out the gap probably 200 feet or so. And then it's a dogleg right, but it's not as far distance. Once you dogleg right, it's probably that 100 feet that it's talking about here. Now, my typical play is to go forehand, time lapse, try to flex something down that hallway. I overflexed that shot a little bit. I got all the way to the end of the tunnel, and it clipped a little branch and just went out into the middle of the fairway. It was no problem. Now, there is OB for the tournament out there if you go long, and I will say I was probably about 20 feet from that OB line, so that branch may have done me a favor. I don't know. I didn't feel like I threw it that hard, but apparently I was 20 feet from OB line. There's a little tree in between me and the basket, so I really didn't feel comfortable trying to run some 80-foot miracle throw-in birdie. So I just took my entropy and just threw it into the ground underneath the tree and let it slide up underneath the basket, tap in par. Moving on with my life. We get to hole 9, which is one that is definitely a bonus birdie, 330 feet. I'm going to see if we have pictures of hole 9, because hole 9 can get tricky. We do. Let's take a look at this. So hole 9, you can see you got this one big tree right in the middle. So my play for the longest time, and probably the typical play, is you throw a backhand down here and you kind of push this tree line on the right hand side, and if you do that correctly, you can split this gap down here where there's a couple little trees by the basket, and if you have the power, you can get down there and give yourself a putt. But you also risk throwing into these woods on the right and then getting into trouble. Now, the other problem is on the left-hand side, because this is actually a dangerous tee pad. I was concerned about this before seeing the tournament. Hole 10's tee pad down here and this tee pad, they kind of conflict with each other. If you fade out early throwing off either of these tee pads, you kind of fly towards each other. And I think that's why they put the OB on here. Makes 100% sense to me. You definitely have to have that OB line, or otherwise people will be risky and you're going to have someone get hit with a disc. But I was going to throw my coalesce on backhand and almost kind of just lay this up. But then I found out, one of the card mates said that once you get to 10's tee pad, the OB line stops. Like, it doesn't go all the way down. So with that being the case, I switched back to my time lapse. And I went down this right-hand side with a flex forehand. And I've had some success with that. It's rare that I do something stupid and like fade out early into these trees. Every now and then I might burn it over. Maybe 10% both directions I may have that error. But generally what happens is I flex it down here, fades out a little bit early and lands around these two trees, and I've got like a deep circle 2 putt usually. But I put just enough juice on it. It was perfect. I parked it. I had a 10-foot putt for a tap-in birdie on 9. So super bonus birdie. Was really happy to get that one. Did I say the distance on that? I don't think that I did. 330 feet. So was very happy about getting that one. Moving on to hole 10, which I was looking forward to playing because I really wanted to try to throw my tenacity on a huge sweeping flex. I wanted to throw it up there on a hyzer and just let it do it, that huge sweeping S curve. But the problem is you got the road on the right is OB, which shouldn't come into play. It's really rare that I have something go over to that road even when I'm trying to get that big flex. My concern was fading out early and getting to that OB line that was dividing the fairways we were just talking about, because the last couple casual rounds I played with Ross, especially the most recent one, which was like Thursday of last week, I think, I threw that huge sweeping tenacity, my longest drive ever down there. Probably got to somewhere around 100 to 120 feet from the basket, but the problem is it would have been just over that OB line on the left. It was kind of getting close to 11's tee pad if you're familiar with the area. So I was like, I'm not going to risk that. But I was really struggling with figuring out what kind of shot can I throw here safely that's not just a straight layup. I don't like the right side hyzer play because I've only tried that like 2 or 3 times and not successful. I was struggling, so I just went to my second most reliable disc because I did want some distance. I went with the Zenith, and I figure I'll throw this low and on just a little bit of anhyzer, and that way it's kind of an uphill shot. Let's see if they have pictures of this. I think they do. Yeah, it's slightly uphill. This is the long tee pad. All right, so they don't have the short tee pad, but this tree, if you're looking at the screen, is on the hill, and the OB line is pretty close to that. It's maybe, I'm guessing, 40 feet left of that. And I figure I'll just throw this low enough on an anhyzer to where it'll get up there. And if it starts fading out early on me, no problem, because it'll hit that hill and, kind of stop. Or if I put the correct amount of angle on the disc, I'll actually get over and down that hill and have a really good position. Well, the angle was good, I think. But again, I threw it nose up. So I was going OB 100%. This would have been my first penalty, but I hit that tree. It was fading. It started to fade out, and it hit that tree, and it kicked it right into... I couldn't have asked for the course to give me a better spot to take my second shot from. So I step up there, and there's this little tunnel, and again, there's no pictures of it, but there's this little tunnel, these two trees that it's almost like a field goal post, and it's a nice low shot. You throw... All I needed to do was throw an entropy into the ground between those two trees and let it slide up there. I felt 100% confident of that, but what I didn't feel confident about is that OB line that I've been talking about wraps around the back of that basket and right around the edge of the circle one, I would guess is so if you go 30 feet deep of the basket, you're probably going out of bounds. So with that being the case, I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm just going to take my resistor and throw a spike hyzer out over the OB line on the left and let it come back towards the basket, because I figured that is the safest way to give myself a look at birdie and a guaranteed par and no OB. And I sawed it off, played it too safe, hit branches, and left myself 120 feet to get up there. So taking my third shot, no point in even trying a birdie. I just took my koi and just threw a nice low layup underneath the basket and tapped out my par. Definitely a hole that you want to score on. I will say, kind of in my defense, have never played it with that OB line on the left, so that was kind of messing with me. But you still want to score on that. And again, I got saved. That should have been an OB. The tree kick saved me. But moving on to hole 11. Hole 11 is one that I used to never birdie, and lately I've been birdieing it quite often. But that was not the case today. Spoiler alert. Or not the case for this tournament. So hole 11, playing from the short tee pad. You can see you got these two little trees out here that stop you from kind of throwing this flex line. And you got these two power towers out here. And the play is the basket's actually like right here in the middle of the screen, right past this. So what you want to do is you want to throw something that can penetrate straight between these two towers and then just fade at the end. And I stepped up. I had T-pad, I believe. Yeah, I had T-pad. So I stepped up with the Zenith, and this is the play I've been doing lately, and it's usually been working out pretty well for me, as long as I don't just botch the shot. I'm throwing a low, dead straight shot right between these power towers like I was talking about, and I let go of that disc, and I let go of it, and I was like, ooh, that is perfect. That is a parked birdie, and it would have been. But as it's going underneath this second tree, it got a little bit of lift, and a branch, the skinniest little branch in the world, touched the top of the flight plate. Like, it didn't, the front of the disc, or the side of the disc, the rim didn't touch the tree. It literally touched it like a needle on a record player and knocked it down, and it ended up landing out here probably just outside of circle 2, 75-ish foot out. So I gave it a little soft bid and missed, but I had a tap out par. I was kind of sad about that because it really was a pretty good shot, and that's a hole I like to birdie just for doing it, because it's one I used to never birdie, and lately I've been playing it really well. But anyways, took my par there. So recounting, going into the last 3 holes, I should be 7 down, I believe. I got 15, 16, 17, 4, 5, 6, 9. Yep, so 7 down. Now hole 12 here is an interesting hole because this hole had recently changed. Let me go back and give you hole 11's distance. I didn't do that on hole 10 either. Hole 10 was 530 feet, par 4. Hole 11, 366 feet, par 3, plays just slightly downhill. So probably plays close to about 350, would be my guess. Hole 12, 268 feet. So really used to not be as easy as it is now. If you look at the picture here, playing from the short tee pad, this tree that is on the right-hand side, that it would just give you a straight shot that fades at the end into this hill that the pin is on. That tree is now gone. So it used to be you either had to throw this little soft flexi type backhand shot, or you had to go forehand. And the problem with going forehand is I would throw a good forehand, I don't know, 20% of the time. And then 50% of the time, for whatever reason, I would overflex my forehand and go straight into these woods because the woods are like perpendicular to your tee pad. If they were more parallel or more like 45 degrees, I think it'd be a lot easier of a forehand. But with it being perpendicular, it's kind of hard for me personally to swing a forehand out there and get it to fade in this hill and not risk fading out early and going down the hill to the right, or even bringing that power. There's a fenced-in power plant subdivision over there. So I don't want to bring that into play. But I digress. With the tree being gone from this hole and it being 268 feet, there are no questions about this. I've been basically... The only time I don't park this shot now is when the disc hits on the hill and rolls away. I throw my resistor on backhand and I just kind of try to throw it out there somewhat high and with some decent power. And I landed just short of the basket, 10-foot tap-in birdie. Easy peasy, no problems there. So was happy about that. Now, this is a must birdie hole, so no bragging rights for throwing a good shot. With that tree being on, it's pretty simple for me. And again, let me clarify, when I say things are simple, this is my home course. I play this course several times every single week, and for the longest time I was playing it twice a day. So I just mean it's simple in that regard. All right, let's move on here. I've been talking forever. All right, moving on to hole 13. This is the only other hole in this course I have never birdied before. It's typically a par 3, 477 foot, so it's a pump, and you have some problems to worry about. So here it is. This is the shot. You got big trouble on the left with all these woods if you saw it off early or, release early. And then out on the right-hand side, this hole doesn't come into play so much, but this is Kaufman. This is a pretty busy road, and there's a lot of wind that comes along this. This is like a wind tunnel with all this traffic coming through here. So if you throw anything understable, you can risk going out towards that. And again, on this hole, I don't think that I've ever had that road come into play. And to be honest with you, if you throw out here into the right of this open field, it makes your approach pretty easy because then you don't have to worry about these woods on the left-hand side. You're kind of throwing at them being perpendicular on a backhand, as opposed to if you just kind of end up straight here, you have to worry about if you fade out your approach shot going in there. But again, I just went with old reliable through the zenith, just threw it dead straight. Actually had pretty solid distance. I probably left myself, 100 foot, I would guess, maybe 120 feet of an approach shot. So I just stepped up with my entropy, snapped it up there on a forehand, parked it right underneath the basket, and took an easy tap out 3 birdie. So it was nice to get that kind of bonus birdie here because this is, again, typically a par 3. And this hole, I would say a good chunk of the time I take a 4 on, just because if you don't have a solid drive, that approach shot kind of gets kind of tricky. All right, moving on to hole 14 and what is the final hole of the tournament for me. Keep in mind at this point, I am 8 under par. I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of a complete noob at using the PDGA live scoring app. This is only my second tournament. I've used it for both solo tournaments I've been in, but I've never explored playing around with it really. I did after this tournament, but I didn't know how to check scores. So I didn't know where I was at in relation to the rest of my field because I was not on a card that had anyone else in my division. So with that in mind, I was like, I don't know where I'm at, but I was never concerned with where I was going to finish. Obviously, you always want to win, right? But my concern was, can I set a goal for this tournament with me being new to playing tournaments? Can I set a goal and can I achieve that goal? And my goal was to go in, play as clean as possible. Like it's honestly a high goal to say, I want to go in here and shoot bogey free. And I will say again, in defense, hole number 3 was playing as a par 4. I think with them having OB, that is the correct par to assign that hole. It's a long hole. It's tough wooded. And if you have OB, it should be a par 4. And casual play, that's a par 3. And I did take a 4 on it. So that being considered, that would have been a bogey for a normal round. And then on the hole 10, kind of the opposite. Usually there's no OB line. I wouldn't have to worry about that. But at the same time, I got saved by that tree from going OB. But anyways, I digress from that. Hole 14, par 4, 486 feet. It's honestly a pretty dang easy hole. It's one that during casual round, you have to birdie it. If you want to score a good score, 14 and 10 are like must birdies. But in my mind, my goals are achieved. If I can par this out and not risk it, we're good. But anyways, I step up with my Zenith. And I'm like, okay, this is the type of hole. I want to show this on screen if there's a picture of it. Again, 486 feet, par 4. That's 13, isn't it? Yeah, 13. Yeah, no, those are 14. Yeah, it's 14. So this is from the long pad. No, that is 13. That's 13. They don't have pictures of 14. It's very similar to 13. The only difference is I'm going to show you from the long tee pad over here. Yeah, so this is 14's tee pad. I'm sorry. So 14's tee pad, this is the long one. So we didn't throw from here. We threw from over here on the left. And you have this little hill. This is a weird hill because it's like a double hill. It's a hill going, parallel to the way you're throwing, because you kind of go up it here and then down it on the backside. And then it's a hill perpendicular to you. It's the hill going left to right, but this is just straight downhill. So again, because this wind tunnel coming off of Kaufman over here, you'll often find that if you throw something understable, like if there were no road here, no OB on the right hand side, tenacity all day. I'm throwing a tenacity up there on hyzer and letting it just do its huge flex line. But you can get into big trouble. Even the Zenith, which I chose to throw here, the first time I ever threw that Zenith, expecting it based on the flight numbers to be semi-stable, it's got 11.5, only a half a turn, a 0.5 turn, and a 2.5 fade or a 2 fade. I was expecting that to be pretty stable, and I usually kind of throw at this left power tower over here. That way, in case it does turn on me, I don't risk going over that road. And the first time I ever threw it, it went into the road and got ran over. But I went with that disc for the tournament, and trying to play it safe, I figure, let's just get on or slightly over this hill on the left-hand side, and that'll leave me 150, maybe 180 foot approach shot that I should be able to do easily with a forehand entropy. And I borked it. I released it super early, no turn at all, going over this hill, just riding the tree line. And one of the players on the card, she said immediately, like, "What are you doing? Like, you've played a great bogey-free round." And I said, I know, I'm a noob. Like, what do you want from me? I messed that shot up. I got into trouble. I was in these trees. Luckily, it wasn't too bad. I was at least able to get my foot in there behind the disc and have enough of a shot to get out that I went with my relay, and I was like, I'm going to try to get down to the basket at this point, because I felt pretty comfortable that no matter how I mess up this forehand approach shot from in these trees, I shouldn't go out of bounds or back into the trees. That should be, I should be safe from. And of course, right on cue, as I go to throw that forehand, I hit the dang tree that I'm like, or the honeysuckle branches that I'm in. So it just immediately knocks my shot down. I maybe advanced 50 foot. A pitch out wouldn't have been much worse than what I got. But from where I was at this point, I'm down at the bottom of the hill. I'm in that 150 footish type range, maybe 180. Again, somewhere in that simple entropy layup. And that's what I did. I just took my forehand entropy layup, put it by the basket, tapped it out for a par. But a disappointing par. Again, I was happy because I achieved my goals I set out for. I played clean. I ended up 9 under, thanks to a couple, you got to have, this course, you got to have some sort of luck. You are not, unless you're playing on the pro card, my opinion on it is it's extremely rare. I can't tell you how many times that me and Ross go out here, we start off on hole 10. I can score on 10, I'll score on 11, I'll score on 12, I'll get 14. Then I'll grab one or two of the ones up on top of the hill, maybe 15 and 16, something like that. You'll be sitting at 5 or 6 under, and you get into the woods, and you just start taking bogeys and double bogeys, because it'd be like that sometimes. That's how the course plays. You need some luck, especially in the woods. So I got a couple lucky strokes out there saved on me, the OB on 10, and maybe the kick out on 7 a little bit. I don't feel like that was much luck. I threw a really good second shot. But my drive was complete dog poop. But yeah, anyways, I finished 9 under. As soon as I got to the picnic shelter at the end, I will say also it was nice starting off on 15, because we finished and just had to walk up the hill right to the end. Didn't have to walk across the entire course. And I went up there, and I guess most of the other cards were already done. A lot of the players up there were super nice. John Cox, I know sometimes you listen in, so if you're listening, big shout out to you. I stopped and talked to John for a little bit. Just everyone was cool. That's my favorite part about doing these tournaments, is that, even though I was on a card with like an FA4, a couple MA4 players, I think, people that weren't in my division, I was kind of worried because I do like playing with the old guys because it's more my sense of humor and my vibe of just being like, hey, we're just going to kind of have fun here. Like, if I win, I win. If I don't, like, I don't care as long as I'm not, just acting a fool and botching every single shot. But everyone that I've played these tournaments with so far in disc golf, it's been really enjoyable. So I would like to thank all of you, even if I haven't played with you yet, if you're just one of those people that you get out there, and even if you're super competitive, if you're still chill and just have fun with it, and that's what I really like. But I think that's it. So I guess to recap, I did take home the victory. It's my first ever win, second tournament. I think we had a card of 6. Let's talk some results real quick. Give some props where props are due too. So I'm going to pull it up on screen, and this will end our podcast for this week. Looking at the MPO, everyone in the area I think knows Jeremiah and Luke. Jeremiah won it 11 under par, so that's a great round because they're playing long tee pads too. I think long on everything except 8 and 9, which if you have to play long tee pads on 8 and 9, someone hates you because those are terrible tee pads unless they're par 4s. But great shooting, 11 under, 10 under from long tee pads. That's pretty amazing in my opinion. Let's see here, MPO 40. Nick Snyder won at 6 under, and then Andrew Blankenmeyer and Jason Nieneman, sorry if I mispronounce any names, finish tied for second, those two. Coming down to MA1, Ezra Calhoun at 6 under, and Theo Andreas at 5 under in second place, and Marcus Now 4 under in third place. I'm just going to go through the podiums here. And then my division, the MA40, obviously myself in here at 9 under. Robert Corby, we had basically a 4-way tie here for second place. So Robert Corby, John Cox, Eric Calhoun, and Blake Schaefer all tied at 4 under. MA50, Jared, I'm guessing that's Bab, shot a 5 under to take the victory there. And then Scott Jenkins and Jason Jumpman Clemens, I like the name, especially with the little carrot in here, both tied for second place, 3 under. MA60, love seeing all the different divisions out here. Brad Stewart, +1, David Hemming, +4, Don Farrow, +5. Again, for being a 16 older card, 1 over par, that's relative to the course. I would say a lot of those long holes, like the ones on Kaufman, those ones that are par 4, I would probably say would typically be a par 5 if I were building a course. So 1 over related to the course, pretty good scores there. MA2. So this is what I like to do because I still struggle. I still struggle a little bit with, should I play MA40 or should I play MA2? I don't want to play the wrong division. I default to playing the MA40 starting off because I feel like that'll be a looser environment, a looser atmosphere, that thing I'm talking about, to where, like my opinion for myself is if I win, cool. But as long as I have a good time and the people I'm playing with are enjoyable, like that's more important to me, at least right now, getting into this competitive side of things. So I do like to compare my scores, like, hey, had I played MA2, if the layout's the same at least, where would I have placed? And I know that's still not an apples to apples scenario because I'm not playing with the same people on the card. I think seeing the people you're playing against also adds a little bit of an element to things. Like with me being on a card with people that weren't my division, it was more like playing a casual round. Like I didn't see other people like, oh man, he shot a really good shot, or she shot like that was a crazy shot. Like I need to execute. I didn't have those kind of feelings. I don't know if that's real or not, but that's how I feel. But I do like to look at my score in comparison to MA2 because I think if I get out of the age division, I would start off in MA2 and kind of see how things go. If I were ever lucky enough to get up to MA1, that'd be great. But that's, we'll talk about that another day. But let's look at some scores. So MA2, I was actually reading, obviously most people in the area know old Aaron Carroll here, the Sizzle. Saw him post that they were actually tied. Ryan, I'm not going to try, man. I'm sorry. I'll definitely butcher that name. But Ryan here on the screen, along with Aaron Carroll, I think, if I'm not mistaken, they tied 7 under par, good scores. And then they had a playoff on hole 1. I'm not sure of the exact details, but I heard Aaron say that Ryan was able to take away the win after the first hole of the playoff. And then Tanner, again, I'm terrible with names and I don't want to butcher one, but Tanner and Paris here, tied at 6 under. And if I'm not mistaken, I want to say these 4 were on the same card. And I'm basing that. I saw Paris comment on Aaron's post talking about their card, and I think that they were. I think at least those 3. I'm not sure if Tanner was on that card, but good shooting, guys. 6, 7 under, enjoyable to see. MA3. I'm gonna go through. Oh, look at this, 10 under. That's a dang good score. Isaac, again, I think I can get this one. Rechsteiner, 10 under par. Great round. Took home that. Christopher Carr and Jeremy Schrader tied for second at 5 under, along with Braden Walther as well. I want to look through these names, see if anyone that I was playing with are in these divisions. James Mummert is a name that stands out here. I saw him post that he was playing with his offhand. If I'm not mistaken, he's left-handed, so I think he was throwing righty for that tournament. So if you throw right hand or offhand here, I should say, and you're 7 over, I think that's some pretty dang good shooting. I can't throw. I'd be 7 over per hole if I tried to throw left-handed as a righty. MA4, right? Getting down here. Let's see. James Deslarius. Sorry, I told you I'm bad with names. 3 under par. Roberto, 2 under par. Paul Harris, 2 under par. To round out your podium. Now, I know that there were, I'm pretty sure Justin here, Justin Rich, yeah, he was on my card. Super cool dude. Also James Pressler. So these 2 are on the card with me, and Blake Scholes, or Scholesy. Sorry if I mispronounce your name. Super cool people to play with. And then we also had Shonda. Shonda was awesome. And I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names and remember them. I don't even know if Shonda had somebody with her that was caddying. So it was cool having conversations with both of them as well. I know they said they were running a tournament, I think, up in the Bucyrus area coming up soon. So maybe if I don't have anything on the schedule, I might try to head up there and get to that. But one thing I forgot to look at, I wanted to look at my rating because I was really excited to see how shooting as good as I did would affect my rating. Let's go over to my rating real quick. So here is my entire career, quote unquote career. Again, I've been a PDGA member since 2022. I joined at the beginning of the year. I've never played any rated rounds prior to this year. So I got 2 events, 1 win. Feels good to see that. I don't know why, but it does. So I was a 936 round rating in my first round. And then in this one, I believe it was 976. Yeah, 976. So if that works like standard math, and I'm still trying to learn this stuff on the disc golf side of things, obviously that's a 40-point difference divided by 2, should switch it by 20 points. I should have a 956 overall rating. So I don't even know how good that is in the grand scheme of things. I always hear people talking about 1,000 ratings like the way to go. Like, I don't know anything about it, but with me not having much to talk about other than quick pro score recap and that whole taking forever to putt thing, for they call him Cupcake. I'm not sure if he likes being called that, so I'll try to refrain from that for the time being. But other than that, I didn't think I'd have a long episode today, and I just get long-winded. This reminds me of a certain topic at work, which probably drives people crazy. Once I get started talking about it, I won't ever shut the hell up. But I'm going to do you that favor. I'm going to shut up now for you. But I do appreciate you guys, as always. If you're following along on YouTube, if you wouldn't mind, hit that like button. It'll help. One quick last thing. I keep talking about it. I'm going to get done as soon as possible. We're getting close to 100 subscribers. I want to do a disc giveaway. I'm just trying to figure out some kind of artwork. I want to do my logo, but like in a stained glass, and my logo just doesn't take well to it. So I'm just trying to figure out something else. I'm playing around with AI and whatnot, but here very soon I will put out that giveaway, and I'll put the details in a video for you guys. So stay tuned to the channel for that. And other than that, I appreciate you, and I will see you in the next video or on the next podcast. Thanks so much for watching.